Today's notes are on multiplying and dividing fractions. Last class we reviewed how to add and subtract them. And for the most part, multiplying and dividing fractions is easier than adding and subtracting because we do not need a common denominator. So our steps to multiplying fractions, the first thing, any mixed numbers we're going to need to change to improper fractions. We've reviewed how to do that last class. We'll go over it again today. And then we simply multiply straight across. We multiply the numerators together and we multiply the denominators together. We do not need to get a common denominator if we multiply, or as we learn here in a little bit, if we divide fractions. And then we always need to write our answer in simplest form. So example 1, number 1 there, asks us to multiply -2/3 and 4/5. -2/3 times 4/5. So going through our steps here, we have no mixed numbers, so we don't need to worry about changing to improper fractions. We multiply the numerators together, and we multiply the denominators together. So numerators, I do -2 times 4. -2 times 4 is -8. And we multiply the denominators together. 3 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Reduce if we can. We need to write our answer in simplest form. 8 and 15. There's not anything other than 1 that I can divide those both by. So we are finished. That is our answer. -8/15 is correct. Question number 2 says 1 3/5 times 10/11. 1 3/5 times 10/11. So we need to start by changing any mixed numbers to improper fractions. 1 3/5 is a mixed number. We change it to an improper fraction by multiplying the denominator, 5, times the whole number, 1. 5 times 1 gives me 5. And then adding the numerator. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 gives me 8. 1 3/5 is the same thing as 8/5. 10/11 is not a mixed number. We can just leave it as is. Now we multiply the numerators together. 8 times 10 is 80. And we multiply the denominators together. 5 times 11 is 55. 80 and 55, we're trying to find a common factor between those two things. I can divide them both by 5. 80 divided by 5 is 16. 55 divided by 5 is 11. 16/11, and that's a perfectly acceptable answer. Even though it's an improper fraction, that's fine. If you want to try to change it to a mixed number, you can. As long as you do it correctly, it would be 1 5/11. I would just leave it like that. Number 3 says -2 1/4 times -1 6/7. -2 1/4 times -1 6/7. Start by changing to improper fractions. We ignore the negative sign because the whole 2 1/4 is negative. So we're just going to do 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. This is 9/4, and because it was -2 1/4, it's -9/4. Same thing here. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 6 is 13. And it was also negative. We're multiplying here. 9 times 13 9 times 13, that one you might be able to use a calculator on. Should be 121, I believe. 117, that's right. 130 minus 13. You could also multiply it out. 13 times 9. 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 1 is 9, plus 2 is 11. Negative times negative is positive. 117 over 4 times 7 is 28. Not as easy to tell if I can reduce this or not. There's a couple different ways you could do it. Looking at 9 and 13, 4 and 7, there's nothing that can be reduced between any of these. So I know there's nothing that can be reduced here. Whereas on this one, notice 10 divided by 5, that could be reduced by dividing them both by 5. So if you look at the individual factors, that might help. If this is a calculator problem, I'd start with the 28. Things that multiply to 28 are 1, 28, 4 times 7, 2 times 14. And because this is an odd number, I know it's not divisible by an even number like 2 or 4. Not worried about 1 or 14 or 28. Really the only thing I need to check is to see if 117 is divisible by 7. So 117 divided by 7 does not come out even. So there's nothing that can be reduced here. 117 over 28 is correct. 10 thirds times 9 fifths. 10 thirds times 9 fifths. The written is improper fractions, so we can go ahead and move on to step 2, multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. Uh, 10 divided by 5, or 9 over 3, those would reduce, so I can reduce this. There's lots of things you could do. If it's a calculator problem, you could just divide it and see if it comes out even. If it doesn't, we can for sure divide them both by 5. Gives me 18. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and then 18 divided by 3 is 6. So notice if you were allowed to use a calculator on this problem, typing in 90 divided by 15 gives us 6 exactly. So if we divide it and it comes out even, you want to go ahead and reduce it. We learned how to multiply fractions. Dividing them just has one more step. We still want to start by changing anything to improper fractions. And then once we have anything as improper fractions, we keep the first fraction, keep it the same, change from dividing to multiplying, and then flip the second fraction. That is called multiplying by the reciprocal. So likely in a previous class you've heard of the phrase keep, change, flip. Keep the first fraction, change from division to multiplication, and flip. Flip means you take the reciprocal. We switch the numerator and denominator. And then once we do that, now we have a multiplication problem, which is what we just did. So here I have 1/3 divided by -2 over 9. 1/3 divided by -2 over 9. Keep, change to multiplication, flip to 9 over -2. And now it's multiplication. We only do this, we only do keep, change, flip if we are dividing fractions. We don't do it with multiplying or adding or subtracting like we did last class. 1 times 9 is 9. 3 times -2 is -6. And then I can divide those both by 3. I get 3 divided by negative 2. 3 over negative 2 is the same thing as negative 3 over 2 is the same thing as negative 3 over 2. Any of these would be acceptable answers. My guess is you would probably leave it like this, but if this ever happens to be a multiple choice question, you see the negative sign on the top instead of the bottom or out in front of the whole thing, they're all the same thing. As long as we have one negative sign. It can be on the top or the bottom or out front. Shouldn't be on the top and the bottom. Negative divided by negative. That would no longer be negative. It would be positive. Number 2, if we do keep, change, flip here, I have negative 2 over 7 times keep, change, flip, 5 over negative 4. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. 7 times negative 4, positive times negative is negative. We can divide these both by what? 2. Giving me negative 5 over negative 14. We're not going to write our answer as negative divided by negative. Negative divided by negative is positive. 5 over 14 is our answer. A couple more and then you guys are going to try some. Number 3 says 1 and 2/5 divided by 4 over 10. 1 and 2/5 divided by negative 4 over 10. Before we keep, change, flip, we always want to change to our improper fractions first. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. So all I did was change to an improper fraction. Now we can keep, change, flip. And then we can multiply it out. 7 times 10 is 70. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. And we can divide the top and the bottom. We could divide them by 2 or 5, or because they both end in 0, we could divide them both by 10. We always want to do the biggest one we can think of. 70 divided by 10 is 7. Negative 20 divided by 10 is negative 2. And finally, number 4. Number 4, 1 1/3 divided by 5. 1 1/3 divided by 5. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1. 4/3 divided by 5. Keep the 4/3. Change division to multiplication and flip. I just have 5. How do I flip a 5? Remember, 5 is the same thing as 5 over 1. So now I can flip. 4 times 1. 3 times 5. Reduce if we can. There is no common factor there. I want you to try this set of problems. There are 4 of them up there. As always, you can pause the video, and then once everybody's ready, we can play and see the solutions. Number 1, change to an improper fraction. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 is 11. It's a multiplication problem, so we multiply across. 11 times negative 3 6 times 5. 3 and 6 could be reduced, so I can divide this. I do want to divide them both by 3, giving me negative 11 over 10. Number 2, I'm dividing fractions. To divide fractions, we keep, change, flip. Negative 6 times 6 is negative 36. 7 times 14 is 98. Positive times negative. Negative divided by negative, so my final answer is going to be positive. Hopefully we can see that we can divide these both by 2, giving me negative 18 over 49. Negative 49. Negative divided by negative, we report a positive answer. Number 3, keep, change, flip. 3 might help to write as 3 over 1. I just get 21 over 4. And finally, number 4, let's change to an improper fraction. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 3. Negative 2 times 23 is negative 46. 9 times 5 is 45. If we're not sure if we have any common factors here, not sure if we can simplify, go back and check. 2 and 9, 2 and 10, or 2 and 5, 23 and 5, 23 and 9. Nothing I can reduce in here, so there's nothing that can be simplified here. That is all for today's notes.